When I was competing in the 70s and the 80s and we had the East German doping era, that was very much limited to sports like swimming, track and field and rowing. And obviously it was limited to elite, events like the Europeans, the Worlds, the Commonwealth Games, well, not the Commonwealth Games, actually it was any time I didn't have to race them, but the Olympics. And so it didn't really mess up local competitions. It didn't mess up nationals. It didn't mess up park runs. It didn't, mess up school sport. Whereas the problem we've got now is it's being ignored that biology exists and that females have had such a battle in the world of sport to get any sort of parity. And we still have no parity. I mean, here in the UK, about 1,000 women earn their living from sport, 11,000 men earn their living from sport. I'd imagine it's pretty similar in Australia. In America, for example, females get 1% of the sponsorship dollar that comes out of sport and 4% of the primetime airtime. We have such a small piece of the cake. And now we're not even allowed to use the reality of biology as a reason why we should have protected category. And we have categories in sport to offer opportunity across the whole of society. So, we have age categories, we have weight categories, we have para categories, and we have sex categories. And of all of those, sex is probably the biggest one where it offers the biggest difference. And Olympic competition, we know that's anywhere between 10 and 30%. So the more explosive an event, the bigger the advantage. Something like boxing, a male of equal weight will hit a female 160% harder. And that's onto a less bone dense, bone structure. So you're going to cause some serious damage in contact sports. And so in something like, rugby or hockey or football, it's a serious accident waiting to happen. So with my history of the East German era, where for a very long time, the IOC allowed the East German institutions to tote their young girls and put them through male puberty, and then they went on to absolutely dominate. I saw it firsthand, how that impacted female sport, how many of my friends didn't get on the podium at all and would have been Olympic champions had it not been for 3 East Germans who, through no fault of their own, had been given testosterone whilst they were, young girls. And now the advantage is even bigger. The advantage they worked out was about 9%. And as I mentioned, it can be anything up to 30% in something like weightlifting. It's an issue with simply saying, why are females not worthy of fair sport? We have 18 peer-reviewed studies in the world, and not a single one of them shows that we can remove male puberty advantage. And the last one was in September of last year, which came out of Brazil, and that was after 14 years, and it was one of the largest. So even after 14 years, we can prove that you cannot remove that biological advantage. So why is it okay to say that women are supposed to line up at the beginning of a race with a known disadvantage? To me, that just seems absolutely crazy. I just cannot get my head around why that seems okay. So let's find better solutions. It's a misogynistic attack on not enabling and not understanding that people that are biologically female are as entitled to fair sport as people that are biologically male. So we have the World Anti-Doping Agency, and their whole job is to stop people from taking illegal drugs, including testosterone, to gain the tiniest advantage. And if that was removed, men would have a real problem. And we've seen through history, whether it's the introduction of racing suits in swimming, or whether it's carbon shoes, or whether it was Oscar Pistorius who wanted to race the able-bodied athlete with his blades, that men, when it affects men's sport, get this thing sorted out very, very quickly. They believe in fair sport and they want fair sport. When it affects women, they don't care. Because on the whole, sport is run by men. And, this has been going on now since 2015 when the IOC changed the rules, and it took 7 years before any international governing body asked a single female athlete how they felt about this.